On a clear breezy night, a team of 4 heroes was facing an S-class monster known as Fenri. This wolf is powerful enough to destroy an entire city. The villagers affected by the threat tried to pool all the money they had to hire the fire dragon Fang to eliminate it. Although our main character is also part of this team, he is actually the most useless one. All the fighting is done by the other 3 members. Fenri, tightly bound, immediately used its extraordinary strength to break free. Fortunately, the team had a skilled healer, so the other girl's wounds were healed in an instant. She continued to restrain the enemy, allowing the swordsman to deliver the finishing blow. The team leader charged in and unleashed a powerful slash, successfully defeating the enemy. At the same time, Kurt, who had been acting as bait, only just regained consciousness, but by then everything had already been resolved. Seeing this, the villagers were overjoyed because now they could live in peace. The next morning, the hero party was invited to stay for a meal. However, since all the dishes were ordinary fare, the team leader was not satisfied. He asked Kurt to do something, like always. Besides, today was also the last day they would get to enjoy a meal cooked by him. Not understanding anything, he asked again, realized he was too useless, so he had been kicked out. The team leader saw that this guy couldn't even kill a single slime, so what could he possibly accomplish? To become stronger, they needed a high-level mage, and since a team must have at least 4 members, the main character had to be the one to leave. There was no other choice. Up until now he had only done odd jobs like cooking and laundry, and when he desperately begged to stay, the team leader just kicked him away. As a result, he had to leave in sadness, knowing that from now on he would have to adventure alone. A few days later, after returning to the city, the main character also tried to find a job to earn some money. He walked into the guild and was warmly greeted by the receptionist there. After learning that he was looking for a job, she also requested an interview to assess his abilities. The main character introduced himself as Kurt, 15 years old this year. He was born in Heart Village, located in the Sin Mountains, which is a place very few people visit. After learning that he had previously worked for the little fire dragon Fang, the receptionist was quite shocked because this hero party is very famous and was recently promoted to SS rank. Unfortunately, he was too useless, so he ended up being fired. Still, the receptionist considered this a big plus in helping him find a suitable job. Hearing this, Kurt was overjoyed. He never expected that doing odd jobs would be so highly valued. Next came the ability assessment, where each person would receive a blessing from the gods. The association is a place that discovers the hidden talents of adventurers. The young man looked excited. Who knows, maybe he would discover his own strengths. The association will assign rankings from G up to SSS. A person ranked D wouldn't even be able to cut steel, but if they're ranked A, they could. And after the assessment, the results showed that all of the main characters' stats were at the lowest rank. That's seriously unbelievable. So the receptionist regretfully informed him that he had absolutely no talent at all. With 0 combat skills, the kinds of jobs he could do in this day and age were extremely limited. Even so, there were still some manual labor jobs available. Since Kurt had run out of money, he also asked for help. After that, the receptionist asked him to try lifting a sandbag, and he did, as she said. For some reason, even though he tried his best, he could only hold it up for a short while. To make matters worse, the sandbag even absorbed his mana. Truly bizarre. Seeing that he had at least some strength, the girl sent him off to do construction work in a border town that was hiring people to repair the city walls. Hearing that, Kurt immediately agreed, since he had no better options left. After bringing the letter of introduction from the guild to the manager, the man saw the main character was just there as a temp laborer. He didn't want to hire him, but since they needed workers, he agreed, even though the guy didn't look muscular. He showed the young man how to mix cement, and then how to plaster it onto the wall. Main wondered whether he should infuse magic power into the cement, since that's how things were done where he came from. Every 3 hours someone would come to check on the work progress, so laziness was not allowed. At the very least you had to finish half a bucket. That was the rule. Before he could ask whether he needed to infuse magic power or not, the person had already left. Kurt thought this was something obviously necessary, so he didn't mention it. Thinking that the manager probably saw him as useless, he tried his best. About 3 hours later, the guy came back and was completely shocked. Somehow, in a miraculous way, Kurt had managed to repair the entire assigned area. He could have done even more, but he ran out of cement, so this was all he could manage. The important thing is, the main character had no idea he was working at the pace of 10 people combined over the course of a month. When asked how he managed to plaster the high sections, it turned out he just used a stick to roll and spread the cement he threw up there. No one would ever do it that way, but he managed to pull it off, so his older brother was left speechless. When asked how long Kurt planned to work here, he said about a week, but he was fired right after that, because if he worked that fast, how could they afford to pay him? The current manager even gave Main all the money he had on hand in advance and said the rest would be settled with the union later. Because Kurt was taking away everyone else's jobs, they couldn't keep him on. It was explained that repairing the walls was actually meant to create jobs for the poor, but now that there's no more work left, those people will starve. They blamed him for working too fast, but from Main's perspective, it didn't seem fast at all. The man even said that Main was no different from an SSS rank, so he advised him to leave this place and go work in the capital where it would be more suitable. Later, he went back to the guild and told them that he was so useless he got fired. He thought people were just trying to encourage him by giving compliments, but in reality he was just too incompetent. Right at that moment, a girl came over looking for someone to help her. However, she didn't have much money, so it was a bit difficult. Kurt thought this girl was really beautiful. The receptionist also came over to ask and found out that this young lady was looking for miners but wanted to pay them based on the results after the work was done. This condition was too unreasonable, so no one dared to take the risk and agree, because if they couldn't mine anything, they'd end up starving. The girl was worried that in a week, the mine she had discovered would be confiscated, so she urgently needed someone right now. Hearing this, Kurt stepped forward and asked to try out for the job since he had some experience. He had previously mined together with the villagers in his hometown, so he more or less knew how to do the job. The receptionist was a bit worried because if it didn't work out, they wouldn't get paid at all. At first the girl refused because she thought this kid looked too weak. The receptionist said hiring a dwarf would require at least 10 silver coins. With no other choice, Ulysses agreed to let the main character try. The young man happily followed, not forgetting to thank the receptionist. Ryo thought he was truly kind and also handsome, perfect for working at a brothel where the ladies could care for him. She even imagined that cheerful scene in her head. A colleague then handed over the payment invoice that Kurt received from his construction job. He was shocked when he saw it because they paid the main character 200 gold coins. Ryo couldn't believe that Kurt could earn so much money in such a short time. She tripped over some sandbags and upon asking found out that these weren't the usual kind. They are used to measure magical power. The more magic you have, the heavier they feel when you lift them. But if you're just an ordinary person, there won't be any reaction. At this point, Xiao finally realized Kurt wasn't ordinary, because to Mainz the sandbags felt extremely heavy, which means he possesses an incredible amount of magical power. Even he himself didn't know he was special. And so, the young man was taken up the mountain to spend the night. Work would begin the next day. The important thing is, there was only one hut here, which made men a bit embarrassed because he had to sleep with a girl. But the girl didn't care about that at all. Kurt thought he couldn't possibly share a hut with someone as cute as Ulysses. When the girl heard that, she immediately protested, thinking he was joking. Kurt said that he had traveled all over the world and had never met anyone as beautiful as her. Hearing that, the girl lost her composure and demanded that he stop talking. Later, when Mainz was invited to eat, he looked delighted because it had been a long time since anyone had done that for him. He was always the one cooking for others. As night fell, Kurt woke up after dozing off for a bit. He turned and saw Ulysses in her underwear flaunting her body and making the young man embarrassed. He thought she was too careless. If it was someone else, she'd probably be taken advantage of. Kurt went outside to sleep, not realizing he was being tested. Ulysses wanted to know what kind of person he was, since they would be traveling together for a week. She had to admit that Mainz was a good guy and especially, very cute. The next morning, she was quite surprised to see that Mainz could do just about anything. Since he had so much free time, he even fixed her shirt for her. Their goal was to earn 10 gold coins within a week. When he asked if she had decided where to dig, he found out she was just going to dig randomly. Hearing that, he was at a loss. How could they possibly find any ore that way? Before starting, he wanted to take a walk around to scout the area first. After a while, Mainz managed to find a suitable spot for mining. He simply used a hammer to break off the outer layer of rock and immediately obtained a large crystal, which could be sold for 3 gold coins. Just like that, after a few hours, Kurt managed to collect a whole bunch. The girl asked if she could sell hers, but Mainz refused. Ulysses misunderstood, thinking that since he found it, he would take everything for himself. But that wasn't the case, because Mainz wanted to increase their value first by turning them into magic crystals. However, as the girl knew, there weren't even 10 mages in the entire kingdom who could do that. No sooner had she finished speaking than Kurt had already completed one, leaving her utterly shocked. He made it look incredibly easy, barely exerting any effort, while it usually took others at least an hour to finish, yet he only needed a few seconds. But she misunderstood again, thinking mages could actually maintain their magic for an hour, which was amusing. Ulysses realized they weren't on the same wavelength, so she didn't know what else to say. Since they had gathered enough that afternoon, the girl wanted to go sell them right away. Kurt, however, suggested staying here because he wanted to do a few things. The woman said she would come back the next morning after selling the magic crystals. When she brought them to the place to sell, they asked to see a permit. She replied that this place had just been created, so how could she possibly have one? When questioned about the source, she knew she couldn't reveal Mainz's identity. She refused the transaction and then took out her royal affiliated adventurer badge to avoid further trouble. Since she couldn't sell them here, she teleported to a place where she knew someone. At first they thought it was something worthless, but after checking, they realized that each stone was worth 10 gold coins because it contained 10 times the usual amount of magic power. Moreover, it was processed with exceptional precision to prevent any energy loss. As a result, Ulysses was paid 500 gold coins for selling 50 similar stones. The girl demanded to know the identity of the creator and insisted that these stones could only be sold at this shop since her superiors would not want such items to flood the market. Ulysses refused to reveal the maker, even when threatened, saying that she no longer served the royal family and therefore had no reason to follow their orders. With no other options, the girl resorted to advising as a friend, urging her not to let the creator leave the country. She said she was willing to grant Mainz a royal title if the king valued him. He might even become a count. The next day when she returned, she saw the young man had already built an entire house. Unbelievable. When she asked how he finished it in one night, Kurt said people from his hometown always do things that way. The woman thought everyone from his hometown must be monsters, not normal people. The scene shifts to the Fire Dragon Fang party, now facing many difficulties since they drove Kurt away. Their strength has decreased, they can't produce fire, and they can't recover either. They kept arguing like that, making the remaining girl realize that this team was about to fall apart. Back at the small house where Mainz was staying, after hearing Ulysses talk about being invited and treated like a noble, he also asked her the reason why. She explained that the person who appraised the magic crystal he created was a mage from the royal palace. Because he was interested in Mainz, he extended the invitation. Kurt thought for a moment and then politely declined, as he couldn't imagine himself, given his family background, doing a job of higher rank than others. Moreover, this young man actually wanted to return to the Fire Dragon's lair, so for now, he'll keep working at this mine until he gets kicked out. Hearing that, Ulysses suddenly felt very happy. When asked about whether the magic crystals sold could cover the taxes, she didn't dare to say the truth. Instead, she just claimed that Kurt handled everything, so she had already transferred the money into Mainz's account. He still hasn't realized his own worth. I wonder why Ulysses had to go that far. Although that girl really is short on money, she still doesn't dare to accept such a large sum. In short, she still hopes that the young man will continue working here for a while longer. Hearing that, he happily reported that today he had already found a spot with a very good ore vein. When asked about eating, sleeping and resting, the young man said he was fine. He had already slept 6 hours last night. In fact, back when he was still working with the Fire Dragon team, he only got 4 hours of rest a day because he thought that as the one in charge of odd jobs, he had to get up early. He thought Ulysses was disappointed in him, so he promised to make up for the rest time by working even more. This rather serious misunderstanding left Ulysses at a loss, but in the end, she just let it go. After arriving at a good spot, Mainz instructed his friend to dig down below, and even carefully warned her not to dig deeper than 50 meters, as if anyone could actually dig that deep in a single day. As for him, he would head to another location with more crystals. They kept working like that until late afternoon, when Ulysses finally managed to find a rather large piece of material. According to her calculations, it would sell for more than 3 gold coins, so she was very happy. If Mainz converted it into magic crystals, she might even earn more. After that, she went to the spot where Kurt was mining. Just as expected, that crazy guy had managed to dig out an entire tunnel. Seriously, that's unbelievable. The further she went inside, the more spacious it became. She couldn't understand how Mainz managed to finish it in just one day. Just then, the guy came over saying he was looking for her, holding a pile of ore in his hands but claimed it was just junk. Ulysses looked at it and wondered why it sparkled like that. The guy thought these kinds of things weren't worth anything, so he just threw them away. After asking, she found out that this was mithril, which is even more valuable than gold or platinum. In his village, this stuff is everywhere, so they often just throw it away. After hearing that, Ulysses' face ended up like this. She just couldn't figure out what kind of person he was. This is an extremely rare ore throughout the entire world. When asked what Mainz was looking for, it turned out to be orichalcum. She thought this was a legendary ore, because people often call it the metal of the gods, but for Mainz, he just says you'll find it if you keep digging. Usually, you'll come across it after digging about 7 kilometers, just like he did. Suddenly, at this moment, Ulysses realized something was off. This guy not only dug a tunnel over 7 kilometers long in 8 hours, but he also dug straight through someone else's mountain. Now that's something. At this point, her friend thought that nothing could surprise her anymore. Kurt, seeing that digging through the mountain made travel easier, asked if they needed to fill it back in like before, but the girl said just leaving it like this was fine. After finishing the mining work, Mainz had to return to the city for a week to find something else to do. Thanks to Mainz's unbelievable tunnel, traveling between the cities was now incredibly simple. At this point, Kurt ran into Bandana again at Fire Dragon Fang. When he asked why she was there, she said she was no longer a member of that group. A lot has happened since he passed away. The captain kept smashing things up because the food was terrible, and on top of that, he refused to pay the restaurant. The result was that he became wanted everywhere, but he still acted all high and mighty. On top of that, he even forced Bandana to go look for mines. He had no idea that she was actually extremely clever. She temporarily agreed, and while she was at it, took the teleportation stone, saying it would help her find him faster. Right after that, the soldiers stormed in and arrested him. This girl thought Maclefish was really lucky to have been summoned by the church. Otherwise, she would have been caught along with that foolish captain. From this point on, Fire Dragon Fang was considered disbanded. This is the reason she was there, because she actually didn't want the person she was watching over to get involved in that mess. Mines was clearly saddened to see that she was also being expelled. This naive guy said he wanted to return to Fire Dragon Fang, but now it seemed impossible. When the woman asked why, he said he really admired Volnova and still owed him a few things. Bandana saw that name as a perfect cover to hide his identity. Knowing that he was currently unemployed, she agreed to recommend him for a job. She said that one of her acquaintances was seriously short-staffed, so she sent Kurt there to work and earn some money. It was one of the 15 licensed crafting workshops, so working there would be considered a great contribution to society. This is a place that specializes in producing and trading pharmaceuticals as well as magical equipment. The person in charge, who holds a license, is called a master craftsman. They have authority to distribute and develop products. Kurt thought that working here was amazing. But when he arrived, it wasn't quite like what he had imagined. When he knocked on the door, a girl came out to greet him, which took him quite by surprise. Being stared at, she thought that Mines had never seen an elf like her before. He had to apologize and then introduced himself as Kurt. When he asked if she was the master craftsman, he learned that person had already gone out. Michelle is the assistant, and after finding out that the young man had come to help out, she was also glad. Just like that, she pulled the young man inside to take a look. Kurt couldn't understand how this house could be so dirty, and his job today was to clean up this mess. He thought he would be working in the workshop, but who would have guessed he'd end up doing house chores instead? Mines agreed cheerfully, since he was already used to this. Very quickly, everything was spotless and like new in just 30 minutes. After that, the young man went to find Michelle to ask about the next task. Somehow, he ended up stumbling right into the scene of a girl changing her clothes. The girl also asked who he was, so he shyly introduced himself and said he would be working here today. Looking at the mark on her stomach, Kurt realized it was a curse. This young man had always been kind-hearted, so he wanted to help somehow. After briefly examining the curse, he guessed that she had suffered so much that she no longer even felt pain. The lucky thing was that the little one was still able to eat, so Kurt decided to cook porridge. The scene shifts to Ulysses and Mimiko. After presenting the super rare mineral mine that Mines had discovered, her friend estimated that it had to be worth at least 50,000 gold. This was truly insane because Kurt considered mithril to be a worthless metal. Mimiko couldn't even believe that orichalcum actually existed in the world. If rumors about him spread, it would definitely cause a lot of trouble. At best, Mines would be kidnapped to work, and at worst he could be assassinated because it was just too dangerous. This girl admitted that he was a monster boy. She wondered how someone like that could have managed to stay hidden and live in obscurity all this time. According to Ulysses, it was because Mines did odd jobs for the Fire Dragon Fang. Mimiko said that the captain is currently wanted everywhere. When asked what she planned to do with Mines, Ulysses thought she would help him become a master craftsman to avoid drawing attention. The problem is, how can he possibly accept this? Because Kurt is the type of person who has no idea just how outstanding his abilities really are. He always underestimates himself. Back to the young man, he had just finished making the pot of porridge. The owner of the place was also present. Seeing everything so clean, she was extremely surprised. Her name was Ophelia, and after learning that Mines had met the girl afflicted by the curse, she also tried to drive him away, even warning him not to tell anyone else about that girl. After getting paid, Mines thought that this was a bit too much since he had worked for less than an hour. Ophelia blamed herself for letting an outsider come into contact with the girl again. At the moment, she was busy trying to slow down the corrosive effects of the curse. After bringing the porridge to the girl, his stomach kept growling non-stop. The blonde girl explained that the aroma of the porridge made her even hungrier. She was about to test if it was poisoned, but then refused because she trusted that young man. Even though they had only met once, he gave people an incredible sense of reassurance. Moreover, this body is already on the verge of death because of the curse, so being poisoned now wouldn't make much difference. At least this time, she wants to trust someone completely. Hearing that, Ophelia agreed to let her student enjoy the porridge made by Kurt. After taking one spoonful, the blonde girl praised how wonderful it was, but immediately after, she felt pain and collapsed. Ophelia realized she had made a mistake by once again giving in to Liz's wishes, thinking that the food really was poisoned and thus felt bitter. However, after a moment, the girl unexpectedly recovered and said that the curse had disappeared. This left the teacher in disbelief because the recovery process was unbelievably fast. The scene shifts to those behind the curse. After learning that the other side had managed to break it, the mastermind ordered Princess Liz to be killed immediately. That evening, the pair arrived at Mimiko's shop to talk. Upon seeing the princess there, the two immediately knelt down to pay their respects. They thought Liz was gravely ill and couldn't understand why she would come in person. Ophelia explained in detail about the incident where Liz was struck by an extremely powerful curse. Someone is trying to assassinate her because she is the only daughter of King Princess Francois. It's not wrong to say that Liz can be considered a symbol of peace between the two countries. In other words, someone is trying to break this relationship by carrying out an assassination. Mimiko was overjoyed that her friend had recovered. And the reason they came here was to find a young man named Kurt because he was the one who lifted the curse. After hearing that, the other two were stunned. Everyone sat down to talk, and when Ulysses heard about the princess eating porridge cooked by Kurt to break the curse, she held her head in disbelief. It had only been half a day since they last saw each other, yet he was already in trouble. There was just no dealing with him. As for the culprit behind the princess's assassination attempt, there was definitely a connection to the martial arts master, who also had the ability to interfere in palace affairs. According to the list, Mimiko gave 3 results. The first was General Sanova, the top-ranking general. Next was the third princess consort Elsadora, and finally, the bishop of the church named Tristan. He could use his followers to sabotage the protective charms in Liz's room. The girl's stepmother also had the freedom to move about the palace, while the general had connections to a thieves' guild specializing in gathering information. Ophelia realized that it was currently very difficult to identify the true enemy, so she had to set a trap to uncover those behind the scenes. At present, the princess had turned 15, and according to tradition, she would train outside for a year before returning to the palace. Ophelia wanted to set up a workshop as a front, managed by a master craftsman, while secretly allowing the princess to train there. Surely, those behind the scenes would try to investigate this so-called master craftsman, and they would end up creating a fictional character. That way, they would never be able to find out who actually made the scream, and in the end, they would uncover the true identities of those who wanted to assassinate Liz. The important thing now is to find someone who can be recognized as the master craftsman. Hearing this, Ulysses thought it was perfect timing. She handed Ophelia a high-grade magic crystal, which astonished her. The pair explained that this item was actually made by Kurt. Hearing this, Liz was very happy because it proved that he truly wasn't an ordinary person. The next morning, when he went to work, he found the place closed. Michelle then came over and told him that the master had gone out, so he didn't need to do any cleaning today. Hearing that, Kurt became quite upset because it had taken him so long to find a job. He thought he must have done something wrong, which was why they didn't want to hire him anymore. His stomach was growling, so he went off to fill it. Coincidentally, at the eatery, there was an adventurer party looking for a porter. Since the quest had to be completed today, it was likely they would have to turn it down. Hearing this, I immediately went over and expressed my interest in joining. Although he's terrible at fighting, he can definitely handle heavy labor. The girl in the group looked down on him when she heard this, calling Kurt a child. She ended up getting smacked on the head by her older brother, since she was about the same age as him anyway. The older brother was quite gentle. He apologized for his sister's rudeness but advised us not to go as this job was anything but simple. Especially this time, they were going to hunt a golem weighing 200 kilograms. Only someone with expertise could transport something like that. Hearing this, Kurt just smiled and said that if it was only 200 kilos, it wouldn't be a problem. He even suggested that if he could lift both of them up, they should let him join. They still didn't believe it was real until he easily lifted the other guy up. Then it was the blonde one's turn, who weighed 150 kilograms, and he was picked up like a baby. Seeing this, everyone applauded and praised him. As a result, Kurt succeeded and was allowed to join the temporary team. The guy in armor introduced himself as Hans, a danjo fighter, which means samurai, and the captain of the team. Sheena is the archer, and she was also pleased to meet Kurt. He was very happy because these people seemed very kind. More importantly, he had now found a job to earn money. Their team actually has a porter, but he is sick and hopes I will take care of him during this time. Just like that, everyone headed into the dungeon, but as soon as they reached the entrance, Kurt started yelling loudly because he stepped on a slime. Sheena, speechless, also came over to give him a hand. He couldn't even defeat the weakest creature by himself and managed to stab himself in the foot. They also realized he was really terrible at fighting. Fortunately, the two older guys were easygoing, saying that for fighting, just leave it to them. He only needed to carry things, because if he got into danger, even if he beat a monster, he couldn't bring anything back. Kurt was surprised that these people didn't show any signs of anger even though he was so useless. Back at Fire Dragon Fang, he was treated terribly. At the slightest mistake, the captain would hit him. Suddenly I was so moved that I cried. After going inside, they used a type of powder to light up the dungeon. Thanks to that, Kurt was able to spot the goblins' droppings. Sheena looked at the very fresh dung and guessed that they might still be around. Hans reassured his younger brother, saying that if there were only one or two, it wouldn't be a problem, but if they happened to run into an entire pack, they would have to run away before it turned into a fight. Just like that, they entered the ruins and the main character continued to discover a secret door. Up ahead, there were also goblins lying in ambush, making the situation worse. Danjo and Sheena immediately took them down. However, its cry had already alerted the whole pack. Based on the sounds they heard, they realized there were too many, so they had to retreat. Both ends seemed blocked, and they had to prepare for a desperate fight. Seeing this, Kurt announced there was a secret passage here, so he was asked to find a way out. After they ran inside, the girl suddenly closed the door, leaving me confused. When asked why she didn't let the two guys in, Sheena started to cry. Hans, who was outside, also called in, saying that he knew they wouldn't be able to escape while being chased by the goblins. Therefore, they would stay behind to hold off the enemy so the others could escape, which meant both of them were ready to sacrifice themselves, and Sheena had already been told about this beforehand, which was why she closed the door, even though she herself didn't want to lose her brother at all. When Main asked to stay, he was scolded for being someone who couldn't even beat a slime, so what good would he be in a fight? Staying here would only get in the way of the two of them. Seeing them argue, the others urged them to run and not worry about anything else. Danjo had no objections, since this job required mental preparation from the start. Hans said protecting his little sister until death was the greatest honor. Sheena was very sad, but still tried to reassure herself that her two brothers would be fine. After lighting up the room, she was shocked to death to find an iron dragon golem standing right in front of her. At the same time, Ulysses brought Liz to the inn where Main was staying to look for him, and she asked the princess to remember to keep her true identity a secret. The younger girl agreed, saying she also wanted Kurt to see her as an ordinary person. After going inside, they couldn't find him anywhere. The guy with the bandana outside said that if they were looking for Main, he was currently heading to the dungeon in the northeast. Hearing that, Ulysses ran out to check but didn't see anyone. She thought it might be a trap but still had to go and check it out. Knowing it could be dangerous, Liz was supposed to stay here and wait. However, the princess still wanted to go along because she was no longer weakened by the curse. She also scolded Ulysses, saying a bodyguard shouldn't leave her master. Moreover, Liz had magic to protect herself, so she insisted she wouldn't be a burden. Hearing that, the other girl finally agreed and they set off together to look for the person. Entering the cave, they saw many footprints, so they were sure Kurt was here and tried to confirm it. Liz used magic to enhance her senses and Ulysses wondered what kind of sound she would hear. The princess then enhanced her sense of smell to pick up scents. Honestly, that's pretty wild. Ulysses thought about how the two of them had hugged before, so she remembered the scent and pondered as they went deeper inside. Liz said that someone was fighting nearby. To be safe, she enhanced her companion as well and they rushed in. At that moment, Hans and Danjo were on the brink of death. Fortunately, Ulysses' combat abilities were quite high, and she easily cut through the formation of the goblin horde. Meanwhile, the pair inside was still frozen in place before the terrifying monster. Sheena blamed herself, thinking she should have given up on this mission from the start. That way, at least everyone would still be alive. On top of that, she had dragged Main into this mess as well, so she apologized. The Iron Dragon Golem is the type that attacks intruders. If you try to pass, you're sure to die. While the two of them had risked their lives to buy time for the others, it seemed they would have to stop here. Kurt put on a calm front, saying it would be fine, and suggested they escape together. But first, they had to deal with this troublesome golem. Just like that, the young man walked in and dodged the attacks with ease. It seemed Main was already too familiar with this. Every stab he made hit hard. The dragon, writhing in pain, tried to fight back but quickly lost several of its heads. Sheena was so shocked by the scene that she couldn't say a word. In the blink of an eye, the giant creature was reduced to a pile of rubble. Even Slim couldn't defeat that thing, so it turns out he's absurdly strong. But in reality, for Kurt, this was just another mining job. He smiled and said he's been used to this since he was a kid. Just then, Ulysses rushed over and Sheena told her how Main had used a short sword to completely destroy the dragon. After seeing his older sister, he waved to greet her as well. He was completely unharmed and also asked Ulysses to go save the other two who were in danger. Actually, she only came in here after finishing off the group of goblins. Although the other two were injured, their lives were not in danger. She recalled the legend about a boy with G-rank combat abilities but an S-rank mining skill who was able to slay a bringer dragon with just a sickle. So it turns out that Main is living proof that the legend is real. Liz was thrilled to see how cool Kurt looked. Outside, Khan explained that he had never heard of goblins fleeing into this place before, which was why he took on this job. Danzo also expressed his gratitude to Ulysses for saving them. She also wanted to discuss the upcoming establishment of a new workshop. She wanted to invite Main to join. But since he was currently with those other people, he was a bit hesitant. Khan thought this was a great opportunity, so he told him not to worry about them. Regarding that, Ulysses said she also needed adventurers, so she wanted to hire all of them as well. Hearing that, everyone was very happy. Only Sheena was still concerned about Main's overwhelming power. Ulysses reminded her younger brother to go get his aptitude checked after returning, because knowing his true abilities would make it easier to work at the workshop. Later, when they arrived at the guild, Mimi was already there and introduced herself as a royal mage who would help assess Main. She also mentioned that she had heard a lot of praise about him from Ophelia. After finishing up, they let the group of adventurers go celebrate surviving their ordeal. Meanwhile, Ulysses stayed behind to ask her friend about Main's true abilities. She explained that this guild could only assess aptitude from rank G up to SS, meaning that anything SSS rank or higher couldn't be measured. And Kurt was exactly that kind of person. All of his stats and talents are SSS. The latent magical power in his body is many times greater than hers. Letting him become a master craftsman is absolutely the right decision. Mimi secretly thought to herself how lucky she was to be the one conducting the assessment, because if this got out, it would definitely cause a huge commotion. When the two friends returned, they saw the receptionist covering her ears. She must have overheard everything, so the couple teased her and let her join the group of people who knew about Main's abilities. After that, Kurt was taken back by carriage along with the group of adventurers. The place they were heading to wouldn't have any teleportation stones. It's also a bit remote, making it suitable for the princess to train. Because it's close to the demon territory, this area is extremely important. Hiring a group of adventurers to protect the newly built workshop would help avoid arousing suspicion from others. After assessing their abilities, Ulysses didn't see any problems. Sheena, on the other hand, was still preoccupied with Main's true identity, while the two men knew nothing and were simply following orders. When they asked what kind of person the master craftsman was, Ulysses had to lie. She couldn't possibly tell Kurt that he was actually the one. After approaching the city walls, Main recalled how he had been fired the last time, right after being hired to do repairs. He was still under the misunderstanding that he had been dismissed because he was too useless. Once they arrived, Ulysses introduced the place as their base. Looking around, there was absolutely nothing there yet. The other three were a bit worried, but were told that for now, they would stay at a nearby inn for a few days. After that, Main would be in charge of building the workshop himself, and this was agreed upon. He said that if it was made of wood, it could be finished in a day, but to make it spacious and clean would take much more time. The two men thought that building a workshop in a single day was truly impossible. Who would have thought that the young man only needed 3 days to create a workshop just as he wanted? Ulysses had already witnessed his unbelievable abilities, so she said even if it took more than 3 days, that would be fine. If you need any materials, just let me know. Hearing that, he wrote down the important things needed to get started right away. These included ruby, sapphire, and griffin feathers. Sheena didn't understand any of it, since those things had nothing to do with construction. The silver-haired girl knew the three siblings also had a lot of questions, so she took them elsewhere to talk, leaving Main to work. In addition, the princess reminded Kurt to remember to eat and get enough rest, saying there was no need to rush because there was still plenty of time. As for the adventurers, they were also invited down to have things explained to them. The younger sister spoke up, guessing that her friend probably wanted to tell the two brothers about Kurt's abilities. He single-handedly defeated the golem using only a short knife. And to make it even more unbelievable, he said he was already used to harvesting iron golems. Up until now, Sheena is still very scared, so she wants to know who he really is. Ulysses also introduced herself as a former adventurer who once served the royal family. And Liz is not just an ordinary noble. She took out a dagger engraved with the royal family crest, revealing that she is the third princess of this kingdom. However, she is currently hiding her identity, so there's no need for everyone to be overly respectful. As for Kurt, they actually don't have any information about him either. The only thing they can confirm is that Main doesn't have any combat skills, but all his other abilities are at SSS rank. This is a legendary level. People often doubted whether it actually existed or not. But after observing what Main has done, it turns out this is indeed true. Ulysses added that he doesn't know anything about himself. He keeps thinking he's useless, so they're trying to hide his real ranking from him. The master craftsman chosen for this place is none other than Kurt. This is also a secret, so they asked everyone to keep it confidential. Gina is dissatisfied, thinking these people are hiding the truth from Mainz. The girl sighed because, even if she told him with Kurt's personality, he wouldn't believe it. More importantly, she's afraid that if people with bad intentions find out about Mainz's special abilities, they'll try to take advantage of him. but Jaina thinks that these two are already doing exactly that to Minds. Seeing his sister getting too worked up, the older brother had to help her calm down. Danzo still wanted to hear more, so Liz told the story of how Minds had actually broken her curse with a pot of porridge. Currently, hostile forces are targeting the princess's life. Choosing such a remote place is both to ensure safety and to find out who is behind everything. Of course, Kurt didn't know anything. What's noteworthy is that when he discovered the curse, he helped without asking for anything in return. He's truly too kind-hearted and always puts others before himself. Because of such a wonderful personality, Ulysses swore to protect him no matter what. Liz also, as a friend of Minds, asked the three of them here to keep this secret. Danzo then spoke up, saying that just because they're adventurers doesn't mean they have to follow royal orders. However, he already considers Kurt a friend, so he'll do his best to protect him. Kans agreed as well, since there's no reason not to protect a comrade who has faced life and death together with them. The two men swore on their honor to help the princess as well, which made her very happy. Jaina, however, was still a bit worried, thinking that she had only met him for a day. How could she swear life and death for Minds already? Ulysses understood that feeling too, since in reality, she had only known him for a week. Hearing that, the other girl asked for some time to think it over and then walked away. Once outside, she still thought that the boy needed to know the truth about his own talent. When she got to the work site, she was completely shocked because by some miracle, Minds had already finished the massive house foundation. The young man came over to ask what was going on, since the construction wasn't even finished yet. When asked if he had dug out the whole thing by himself, Kurt just laughed and said he was a B-rank earthworker after all. Gina was speechless because in reality, there's no B rank that strong. She admitted that he was really skilled, but he didn't believe it. He said that back in his hometown, building the foundation of a house every day was just routine. He even said he might be the weakest in his village, so there's nothing special about him. Hearing that, the girl was at a loss for words and didn't know how to explain. Gina then asked if he didn't feel annoyed being assigned so many tasks. He just smiled and said no one was forcing him. On the contrary, he actually enjoyed it a lot. In his previous party, he was always called useless and was even kicked out, so being given a chance by Ulysses like this makes him really happy. He feels truly glad that someone like him can prove to be useful to others. At this point, Jaina admitted that Kurt was just too pure and needed to be protected. Understand that every little thing has its own decision. She smiled and said that from now on, the two of them would be friends. As for Danzo, at this moment he went outside to meet Bandana to buy some information. He wanted to know whether the adventurer named Bibinoka was sabotaging his party or not. The girl revealed that he had taken on a mission from the villains and then infiltrated as an adventurer, causing many teams to break up. It seems that this time the main target is Sakura's group of 3. All the details were written down on paper for him to handle on his own. That evening, Danzo went to confront the bastard who had put the whole group in danger. He was quite bitter that Sakura's group was still alive and had made it back. Surprisingly, this guy already knew information about Princess Liz and was planning to make money off of it. Danzo complimented him on his bold get-rich-quick idea. After laughing gleefully for a moment, the guy finally realized who he was dealing with and started to get scared. He remained quite calm and remarked that the man seemed to have had a bit too much to drink. Who goes around confessing all their misdeeds like that? Bibinoka hurriedly tried to slip away, but Danbana tripped him up to use Danzo as a means to deal with him. He had felt something strange about this guy for a long time. So the blade was pressed against his neck, but no action was taken. At the very least, since this guy had worked on the team before, he was let off this time. But he still threatened that if he dared to come near or touch anyone he considered a friend, next time he would definitely die. Seeing this, Danbana was disappointed, thinking she could have relied on Danzo to take care of this troublesome guy once and for all. She was about to take action herself when suddenly 2 men in black appeared and took him away. Realizing that these were intelligence agents under Mimiko, the 3rd-rank royal mage, she no longer needed to take action. Receiving a letter from someone, she thought to herself that it was time to set out for Kurt's hometown. A few days later, everyone was astonished by the factory as large as a castle that Minds had built. Kans even thought he was dreaming. How could one person work this fast? Everything was finished with incredible attention to detail. There was nothing to criticize. Liz was delighted that from now on, this would be her home with Minds. He also came out to invite everyone inside. The young man introduced each area so everyone could get familiar with them. The most special feature was probably the water-generating device made from sapphire gems. It had turned them into a perpetual engine, so from now on there was nothing to worry about. Light was also produced by magical quartz crystals, which could stay on continuously for an entire year. After hearing this, the other 3 were completely stunned and at a loss for words. Each person's bedroom was the same, extremely spacious and comfortable. He turned to ask Ulysses when the master craftsman would arrive. She also lied, saying he was very busy, so not to worry about it. When asked where Mainz's room was, he thought he was just an assistant and could sleep in the kitchen corner, but the other 5 scolded him. They also forced the young man to sleep there, not letting him go elsewhere. After 2 hours of exhausting persuasion, he finally agreed. When asked if it was possible to create a barrier to ward off the house's curse, they learned it would be difficult. Hearing that, Ulysses resorted to manually sticking a bunch of talismans that Mimiko had given her all around the princess's room. Liz then went out to tease her older sister, asking if she was thinking about Kurt. Ulysses blushed and insisted she wasn't jealous at all, telling her little sister not to take advantage of her innocence to make a move. Even so, the next day they were still affectionate with each other, watching as Mainz did all the housework. Suddenly Ulysses wanted to marry him because he was very capable. The others, who had never eaten such delicious food before, also showered him with praise. When they asked where Mainz was, they found out he was off cleaning somewhere. He said someone had scribbled on the wall, so it needed to be cleaned off. After hearing that, Ulysses was startled and rushed out to check, only to see that all the magic seals had completely disappeared. The crazy thing is, Mimiko said that once you get them on you, they're impossible to remove, yet he was still able to wipe them off like ordinary dirt. Truly impressive. The scene shifts to Kurt's former teammates, who have now been summoned by Archbishop Tristan. Malefice will be expelled for being involved in the Fire Dragon Fang Party's violent incident. The team leader is even wanted everywhere right now. She tried to defend herself, saying she did nothing wrong and that it was all the restaurant's fault. They served food that was even worse than pig slop, so I used a punishment spell. He didn't want to hear any of that, saying that even small actions like these have greatly damaged the reputation of the church. Even so, he still highly values her abilities. That's why if she completes a task for him, her offenses will be forgiven, and she'll even be promoted to priest. He then handed Marquise a glass of wine and told her to drink it all. Seeing this, the old man grinned slyly, satisfied that his plan had succeeded. At first, the girl didn't realize how serious the situation was and said she would do anything, just like the way Kurt used to respond when he was still in the party. Tristan then ordered her to help them assassinate Princess Liz. This shocked her greatly, and she was even more stunned to discover that a curse had already been placed on her. The old man then said that from now on, her body would no longer be able to absorb anything except plain water. So if she didn't complete the mission quickly, she would starve to death within a month. Hearing this, Marquise had no choice but to comply, hoping to climb up to the position of priest. Immediately after, she was used as a sacrifice to the demons. They were preparing an extremely dark scheme targeting Liz. Back at home, everything was still going very well at this point. After the princess had her curse lifted by Kurt, nothing unusual had happened yet. Or perhaps the enemy still hadn't discovered her location, so they still needed to stay vigilant. Liz complimented Main's cooking, saying it was always delicious, which made him quite happy. Ulysses thought it might also be because the food Main made had the ability to dispel curses, which was why her sister was safe. In addition, Mimiko had also sent people here to monitor the city. As long as the enemy made any suspicious moves, our side would definitely detect it immediately. After tasting a piece of cake made by Kurt, Ulysses couldn't help but marvel at its unique flavor. He said that today he tried making it with rice flour. Liz looked delighted because the bowl of porridge last time was even able to break a curse. In addition, he told her that she didn't need to worry about being harmed anymore. Ulysses was curious and didn't understand why Main said that, since just the other day he had said it was very difficult to set up a barrier against the curse. Kurt innocently replied that it was true that doing so wouldn't work, but the entire mansion had been designed from the start to counteract curses. Meanwhile, the group of villains was preparing to cast a curse on the princess. As soon as they activated it, Ophelia immediately noticed something unusual. Main also explained that because there was already a protective barrier in place, it was very difficult to create another one as Ulysses had requested. But instead of simply repelling the curse, he had made a small adjustment so that the person behind it would start to glow, making it easy to identify them. Understanding the situation, she immediately had to go report this to Mimiko's group. After that, Main invited his friend to go downtown since she hadn't left the mansion once since moving here. Hearing this, Liz looked sad because she also wanted to go out and have fun everywhere but was afraid of the dangers. At this moment, something had already happened outside the city walls. For some reason, black mist was covering everything. The uncle who previously hired Main turned out to be a general named Auric who had a bad feeling about this, so he had Generic prepare the troops in case something happened. This is an important city, which is why he personally took on the role of supervisor, fearing that spies might infiltrate as workers to sabotage things. Meanwhile, the girls had found the person who cast the curse on the princess. He had been killed to silence him, but for some reason, his whole body was still glowing. Ophelia was extremely astonished by what Kurt had done. He not only created a barrier to counter the curse, but also helped them uncover the mastermind behind it. Ulysses, on the other hand, didn't want Kurt to get into any trouble, so she hoped the other two wouldn't drag him into their own problems. Mimiko agreed, saying she would handle the rest of the investigation herself, and reminded them, "Hey, just make sure Liz doesn't leave the workshop, that way there won't be any danger." No sooner had she finished speaking than all three of them heard the sound of an alarm ringing from outside. It seemed the city was under attack by thousands of monsters. After lighting up the area, they saw an army of mist creatures gradually approaching. The surveillance team had also informed the royal mages about the situation. Several thousand mist skulls were closing in on the city, and it seemed their target was the princess, so they needed to do something to stop them. Auric ordered the soldiers to evacuate the citizens. He said he wanted to stay and fight because the mist skulls would head straight here. Ulysses was planning to return to the workshop when Mimiko received a secret report. After crashing into the city walls, the mist army had all been purified. This scene was so unbelievable that those who witnessed it could hardly trust their own eyes. Speaking of the western wall, Ulysses suddenly remembered that Kurt had once worked there. It turned out that thanks to enchanting the cement, the city wall gained the ability to purify. General Auric also realized that Kurt was the boy who had repaired this entire area. Meanwhile, Marquise was enduring a great deal of pain. At the moment, she was being used by the demon to summon those skeletal mist soldiers. He didn't want her to die just yet because he needed her magic power to summon even more monsters. Only now did Marquise realize that she had been used by the church from the very beginning. Tristan turned out to be a demon in disguise, the one who had colluded with a high-ranking demon to harm the princess. The place used to spawn monsters was the Lapita ruins, which had previously been used to summon demons, making it an extremely suitable location. Although her demonic power was not as great as the gold-toothed fat man claimed, if her entire soul was used as material, it would still be enough to make up for what was lacking. The next morning, Ulysses informed Maine that the area outside was completely surrounded by monsters, so there was no way to call for reinforcements. The group of adventurers they hired was also still outside and hadn't returned yet, which made Liz a bit worried. According to the investigation, the main source of the monsters was the Lapita ruins, so the Night Order was urgently making plans. Unfortunately, the enemy numbers were too great, so they couldn't take action yet. In addition, Ulysses also brought up the incident where the monsters were completely purified by the wall that Maine created. She said that this kind of thing is normal in her village. Every household there does it that way. Ulysses was already used to this, so she wasn't as surprised as before. She also had the idea of going out to eliminate the monsters, so she asked to leave and reminded the two kids to stay inside the house. She said she would go to the ruins to clean up, which made Kurt excited and eager to go along. To make Maine behave, her older sister whispered a made-up story in her ear about a demon that scribbles on the walls, so she should always stay by Liz's side to help her. Hearing that, she happily agreed, saying the two of them would always be together, which made the princess so happy that it felt like she had just been proposed to. Ulysses then went into the storage room and took out the pile of magic crystals that Kurt had made last time, intending to use them to eliminate the monsters. She was also acquainted with General Ario, so she went to greet him and at the same time introduced the third-rank royal mage Mimiko, as well as the master craftsman Ophelia. The older man was quite perceptive. Realizing that the princess might be here, he became very worried and wanted to send troops there to protect her, but was stopped because Mimiko's reconnaissance forces were already present. Getting straight to the point, they wanted to use his soldiers as bait while they would head to the western ruins to put an end to the source of the monsters. To reassure everyone, Ophelia brought out a secret weapon, but as far as Aldred could tell, it was just a magic crystal. Mimiko guaranteed its effectiveness, so the old man agreed to go along with the plan on the condition that he could go to the ruins to help. The deputy protested because it was too dangerous, but the old man had made up his mind. He would let Generic and the soldiers lure the monsters while he and Ulysses would directly attack with the support of the other two. They had to stay behind to protect the city, so they wished Aldred success. The deputy was not at all pleased after this incident, but still poured a drink to offer, not as a farewell toast, but to show their determination to survive and return. When that time comes, they will enjoy together the general's favorite wine. Back at home, I was feeling very down, recalling the old man's teachings from my hometown. When you forge iron with all your heart, you can truly reflect on yourself. It was quite interested in his sharp sword, so Danzo wanted to create a more compact version for personal use. All the events that had happened kept replaying in my mind, and I told myself that I was truly useless for not being able to accomplish anything yet. Meanwhile, in another development, Ulysses had finished her preparations and instructed everyone to close their eyes after she threw the crystal towards the monsters. The very next second, a purifying light spread everywhere, vaporizing all the monsters in front of and around the wall. With the general this shocked, things would be easy now, no need to fight. Even Mimiko and Ophelia hadn't expected this thing to be so effective. The distraction group also began to act, creating an opportunity for the other two to reach the ruins. As for Kurt, he had just finished sharpening his new knife. He thought this thing was just a failed product. Liz happily went in to call him to get ready for dinner, and when she saw the beautiful short sword, the little one wanted to take a look too. Kurt explained that he had accidentally infused it with magic power while he was lost in thought. If you pass the blade over your head, the magic spell embedded inside will be activated. Seeing that his friend liked the item, he decided to give it to her. Watching her smile, he couldn't help but feel a bit sad inside. He had to pretend as if he didn't know anything, but in the end he still had to ask if someone was threatening her life, right? Realizing that he had figured it out, Liz had no choice but to admit it. Men knew she was scared, so he really wanted to do something to help. Liz on the other hand felt troubled because she was always relying on them. Right at this moment, Ulysses is also risking herself by heading to the western ruins because she knows there's something there threatening the girl. What the heck? Kurt then remembered that he and the Fire Dragon Fang party had been there before, and he even thought it was the perfect place for the mischievous demon Ulysses mentioned to doodle around. How funny is that? He also felt defeated because he lacked the ability to fight and considered Liz someone important who needed to be protected. The girl, feeling pleased, replied that to her, he and everyone else were equally important. After thinking for a while, Kurt suddenly decided to invite his friend to go to the ruins to punish the mischievous demon. After preparing everything, Liz grew curious about the magic inside the sword that Kurt had made, so she took it out to try it. According to his instructions, when the sword is raised above the head, it will automatically activate. In another development, Ulysses and General Aldred were trying to get through the monsters to reach the ruins, but there were too many of them. Fortunately, most had been lured away by Generic's decoy team. However, the number of magic crystals they brought was limited, so they wouldn't be able to hold out for much longer. She knew she had to find the source of the monsters immediately, otherwise everything would spiral out of control. Aldred had also been injured, but he didn't want Ulysses to worry about him. She was also struggling against the winged monsters that were clinging to her. Fortunately, Kans and two other teammates arrived just in time. Danzo also introduced himself as an adventurer working for the workshop and was thanked for his help. Sheena happened to have found a passage leading to the ruins, and after checking it out, she immediately shouted to inform everyone, guessing that their target was hiding underground. Hearing this, Ulysses was delighted and asked everyone to close their eyes so she could activate the magic crystal. The purifying light wiped out the monsters ahead, clearing a path for them to enter. The other guys had seen this scene from afar, but they hadn't expected it to be so effective. General Aldred was also given a recovery potion made by Kurt. Immediately, all his wounds healed, leaving him astonished. Kans thought that there would be many more unbelievable things coming up, so they might as well start getting used to it. The monsters inside continued to be summoned. Knowing that Ulysses was tired, the three guys wanted to hold the monsters off here, so that the other two could continue on. Aldred also praised the adventurer group. They really were reliable teammates, so they also had to do their part well. Running inside, the two of them still didn't know where the monsters were spawning from. The demon had already noticed the uninvited guests. He kept draining the nun's strength, leaving her exhausted. Seeing his monster being purified by a stone, he seemed quite intrigued. He also had to give some praise to the group of humans outside. Just as he was getting bored, he decided to have a little fun with them. The deeper they went inside, the more monsters were summoned. Ulysses realized that this might be the source point, so she destroyed the crystal to purify everything. Immediately after, a demon appeared, making them realize that this was the root of all the problems. Ulysses broke out in a cold sweat and called the opponent the final boss, saying he needed to be eliminated. She charged straight in, but the demon didn't resist at all, allowing her to slash and shatter the magic crystal right in front of him. Unfortunately, this only worked on ordinary monsters. As for him, someone with countless lives, it was impossible to kill him. The general also joined the battle, slashing directly at the opponent, but his body regenerated instantly. The demon gave a contemptuous smile, finding his opponents far too weak. It seemed that the magic formation powered by Magelfeast's life force had strengthened him. At this point, his body was nearing the limit of its endurance. Knowing she couldn't survive any longer, she wanted to atone for her mistakes, at least by destroying the magic formation. The demon also offered a compliment, saying he had observed their journey to this place and that it was quite impressive. However, if that's all the strength they have, they shouldn't dream of defeating him. Not only that, he even taunted them by showing images of the vice-captain in danger. Everyone was risking their lives to protect the city and the princess. General Aldred remained steadfast, declaring that they were knights and would never cling to life or fear death enough to submit to a demon. Hearing him shout so loudly, the enemy summoned a horde of monsters to make the battle even more intense. He announced that everyone present would be crushed, refusing to let those threats distract them. The two continued to work together, aiming for the demon's heart and swiftly going for its head. Yet he remained completely unfazed, as if nothing had happened. Seeing their efforts, he decided to give them a chance. He would wait until the princess was dragged out of the city, then let them witness Liz being devoured before finishing them off. Ulysses began to worry because even decapitating or stabbing the demon through the heart couldn't kill it. Even such a powerful magic crystal couldn't wipe him out. If the city walls fell, men and the princess would definitely be in danger. The man seemed to read that thought from her expression and laughed gleefully. He advised her to give up and despair because she would be killed as well. Inside Malefiche, despite her efforts, she still couldn't erase the curse formation, leaving her completely drained and unable to move. Suddenly, at that moment, she remembered the food Kurt had just made, and then out of nowhere she heard the young man's voice. At first she thought it was a hallucination, but the very next second mines emerged from underground. Even though they were surrounded by enemies on all sides, using this tunneling tactic meant there was nothing to fear. Liz also praised the ninth route that Kurt had mentioned, saying it was truly brilliant. When they met Malefiche again, she was surprised too. She couldn't understand why her sister was here. When the woman saw the third princess, she realized Mines had come to accuse her for orchestrating the princess's assassination with monsters. She assumed that given Kurt's personality, he would try to persuade her to stop. When Liz asked Mines about the other woman, he said she was the nun from the party he owed a debt to. After asking her about targeting Liz, Malefiche said, "Why bother pretending anymore? Everything is as clear as day now." She confessed that the entire plan was orchestrated by Bishop Tristan. That idiot misunderstood, thinking that the older sister was punished just because she drew graffiti. After hearing this, Malefiche was completely baffled. As for Liz, now that she knows who was behind the assassination attempts on her, she's also worried. Kurt, on the other hand, scolded his sister for everything. She scribbled in Liz's room, and now she's drawn a huge circle here too. The princess was speechless after hearing what Mine said, but thought it might be better to let him keep misunderstanding. When they asked about Ulysses, the nun said she and the others were upstairs, so Kurt asked for permission to go look for her. However, the princess slyly tricked him into staying behind to erase the doodles, saying she would go find Sister Ulysses herself. He was a bit worried that she might be in danger if she went alone. She smiled and said that with this weapon she wasn't afraid of anything anymore. After that, the two of them split up, each taking on their own task. Malefiche couldn't understand what his younger brother was thinking, letting the princess, whose life was being threatened, go off on her own like that. He then grabbed a mop and started erasing the drawings on the floor. Malefiche thought this guy was really stupid. How could magic be wiped away with just a mop? But the very next second she was stunned to realize that Kurt could actually erase the magic circle of a high-level demon. Up above, when he sensed that his source of power had been cut off, he was furious. This time, he had to dodge attacks from the other two. Ulysses laughed and asked him if he was afraid his wounds wouldn't heal anymore, right? If that's the case, then it's easy. He wanted to use a magic crystal to erase it. However, his opponent had already knocked the stone away. He wanted to finish them off before it was too late. Then Liz walked in and called his name, shocking everyone because she was here. Seizing the chance, the demon attacked directly. The older sister saw this scene and stood frozen in shock. She thought Liz had already been hit, but the previous attack had no effect at all. The opponent laughed with delight, thinking the pact had been fulfilled. He considered Liz foolish, thinking that if she had stayed put, she would have lived longer. As soon as he finished speaking, the princess threw a bucket of cold water in his face, snapping him out of it. Her body transformed into butterflies, deceiving both the enemy and her allies. Her presence, scent, and body temperature were all just like a normal person's, yet it was all an illusion. It turned out that the spell Kurt had cast on the short sword was called Butterfly. It allowed Liz to create a replica that was indistinguishable from the original. This magic sword could deceive all forms of perception. The opponent, still in disbelief, continued to attack but kept failing. Thanks to this, the princess managed to slip behind to where the magic crystal was. Just like that, she smashed it, causing the guy to scream and beg for mercy. Because he had lost his connection to the magic circle below, his body was completely purified as well. Malefiche, who was below, heard the demon's cries and was shocked. He hadn't expected them to actually defeat him. As a result, the summoned monsters also vanished, restoring peace to this place. Their plan had succeeded here, even though a few unexpected things happened. Liz also got scolded by her older sister for risking her life by coming here. She said she felt she had to do something. Besides, with Mines by her side, she wasn't worried. Ulysses breathed a sigh of relief because just now she thought the princess had been killed. Both of them also expressed their thanks, since if Liz hadn't come, they might have been the ones to die first. The general also knelt down to apologize for once again letting the person he was supposed to protect save his life like this. Liz saw them, their bodies covered in wounds, so she couldn't blame them. On the contrary, she should be commended for protecting both herself and the city. Down below, Mines had cleaned everything up and heard his sister's stomach growling. He took out 2 freshly made rice balls and offered them to her. Malefiche thought that if the curse was still there, she would probably throw it all up. But never mind, she decided to give it one last try since the food Kurt made was delicious. This familiar taste instantly soothed the nun's soul, and right after that, the curse vanished on its own. It was only at this moment that she realized this was thanks to Mainz's power and that all this time they had always underestimated him. Accepting the truth, tears of regret began to fall. Kurt, still kind-hearted, asked his sister if she was choking or something, but instead received an apology. He thought Malefiche was apologizing for the graffiti incident, so he forgave her. Then the two girls ran over and interrupted their conversation. Mimiko's subordinate arrived, having followed the tunnel they dug. The other two had to trick Mainz into thinking this person was here to catch the graffiti culprits. As a result, Malefiche was grabbed by the collar and dragged away to be dealt with. Mainz also called out, making her think her little brother would speak up for her. But no, he said, "When I have free time, I'll visit you in jail," which was hilarious. After cleaning up, the two laughed together, making Ulysses a bit jealous. She never expected her life to be saved so dramatically. She clung to Mainz's arm and insisted they go home, which embarrassed Mainz. Besides, the feeling of having someone waiting for you to come home is wonderful. In the evening, everyone who contributed was invited to the workshop for food and drinks. Kurt prepared food for all the soldiers in the city. He saw everyone burying their heads in their food, silent. He worried he hadn't cooked well, but everyone forced themselves to eat so as not to waste it. In reality, it was just too delicious. They were eating so fast it was like they didn't even need to chew. General Ori said the food was so good people feared their portion would be gone before they finished. So everyone tried to eat a lot, since it was rare. Only then did Mainz realize his uncle was the knight's leader. He had thought he was just a construction supervisor. After eating their fill, all their wounds and fatigue disappeared. On top of that, they even got to enjoy a fireworks show prepared by Kurt. A few days later, Mainz recalled a scene from his childhood when a girl his age appeared in the village, so he went over to introduce himself and make friends. Even though Kurt wasn't human, he didn't show any fear at all. In fact, it was the girl who should have been scared. Mainz kept asking her questions and even complimented her on how beautiful her horns were, but the other side had no reaction at all, making the boy quite sad. Just as he was about to cry, the girl said that her father had told her not to talk to people from Heart Village. Because everyone in this village is strange. If you interact with them too much, you might be affected. Hearing that, Kurt didn't think much, immediately introduced the purple-haired guy and said he was Hildegard. Just like that, the two became friends and went off to play together using a golem. The main character introduced her to the many beautiful flowers here, which made his friend excited. Nearby, Hildegard happened to spot a ripe red fruit and tried eating it, but immediately after, she collapsed unconscious because it turned out to be a poisonous papa fruit. The main character was already familiar with this kind of situation, so he ran off to make an antidote using nearby herbs. Since he couldn't give it to his friend directly, he put it in his own mouth and then fed it to Hildegard mouth to mouth. Just as things were getting intense, the guy was woken up by Ulysses. The dream he just had was actually a memory from 10 years ago. They were coming at the invitation of the villagers to solve the severe water shortage problem. If things keep going like this, the crops will wither and die, causing unpredictable consequences. According to the map, she knew the neighboring village had a large lake. She asked no one here had gone to negotiate. Village chief said they had asked help many times, but the other side refused to compromise, so they needed authority of master craftsmen. Main's group had already followed Kurt up the hill. Wherever Ulysses went, the villagers would bow their heads and beg her for help. The neighboring village said that the water in their lake was also running out and there was a risk of drought. At this rate, the only option left might be to pray for rain. Suddenly, a few people came running in a panic to report about the water source. Ulysses rode her horse over to check and saw that an entire large lake was supposedly out of water. After asking around, she learned that this situation had only just appeared here. Looking down and seeing Kurt running over, she immediately realized that this was his doing again. He said that he had drawn up groundwater. The village chief, upon seeing this, was overjoyed and thanked Ulysses profusely as if she was the one responsible. After resolving the issue, they were given many gifts, including a rather special basket of eggs. Kurt thought he would use them to make some dessert cakes. Unfortunately, Liz still hadn't returned, so they'd probably have to wait for her. At the moment, the princess was on her way to meet the lord of this land. His name was Tycoon, and he felt honored to meet the princess in person like this. Liz, however, said that she was only here as a representative of the master craftsman, not in her capacity as a princess. This old man possessed assets on par with the duke, and on top of that, he had connections with both the royal family and the empire. He was probably trying to win over the master craftsman to his side, so Liz was quite cautious. He began probing about Main's abilities, asking whether the magic stone he created could eliminate monsters within a 500-meter radius. Liz thought to herself that this old man was probably trying to fish for information. She smiled and said it was just a rumor. There was no way it could be that powerful. However, he was very cunning, pointing out that the town they were in still didn't have a name. According to tradition, the person who becomes governor will be the one to name the town, so the old man wanted to nominate the princess's master craftsman as governor. The princess hadn't prepared a countermeasure, so she was put in a difficult position because once appointed, Kurt would have to reveal himself and could no longer keep Main's secret. Liz intended to refuse but was talked into it like it was the most reasonable thing. Worse, he made snide remarks at Main. When Liz asked General Alric, he said he and the Order of Knights would be pleased to welcome that master craftsman. Liz was speechless since she had already discussed it with him, yet he still let himself be persuaded. Tycoon kept badmouthing Main, saying he wasn't fit to be governor, which the princess immediately objected to. Too frustrated, Liz blurted out that there was no one in this world as talented as that man. Seizing the opportunity, the old fox appointed Kurt as governor there. Back, Liz had to apologize to her older sister for not being able to keep Main's information a secret. Ulysses was considering finding someone to pretend to be the master craftsman as a replacement. The princess jokingly said that there was no one qualified enough to replace the man she loves, because Kurt is the most wonderful person in the world after all. When asked where he was, they found out he was taking care of the child. Liz was deeply shocked, but still accepted Main's child. Now that's funny. Her older sister was just joking, explaining that one of the waterfowl eggs they brought back had been cared for by Main. With the way he is, who knows, maybe it will hatch into something that lays golden eggs. In another development, Mimiko is currently working at full capacity to deal with issues related to the princess. Every single day, she receives troublesome reports. Additionally, after learning that Bishop Tristan was behind the assassination attempt, our people went to arrest him but discovered he had already died in the church. This most likely means there is still someone else behind the scenes. He was simply turned into a scapegoat by the church. As for the Marquis Main's former comrade, she is still alive. They couldn't kill her because it seems Kurt still wants to visit her in prison. On top of that, there's also the matter of him being about to be nominated as governor. All of this is giving Mimiko a terrible headache, and just after that she gets news that somehow the egg that guy was incubating hatched into a little girl. Seriously, that's just unbelievable. He shows off his child to the other two, leaving them completely baffled. A little later, everyone had to hold an emergency meeting because the waterfowl egg hatched into a child with a face exactly like Main's. The child looked just like a 3-year-old, so they couldn't understand how it was possible. Kurt said that for a newborn to already be this big, there's no way a human child could ever be born from an egg. So this must definitely be a monster. Kurt himself also understood that the girl was not a normal human. Therefore, Ulysses suggested handing her over to herself to deal with, since the girl could very well be a dangerous monster. First of all, she imitated his appearance to make everyone lower their guard. Main could not accept that his daughter was a dangerous creature capable of killing everyone. The older sister still tried to step forward to take her, but Main stopped her. He believes the girl is not some kind of evil monster. He also promises to take responsibility for raising and caring for her, so there's no need to worry. Ulysses was moved by these words, but she still made up her mind since the girl could put both the princess and Main in danger. Suddenly the child called her mom and called Kurt a dad, making her heart unable to resist this cuteness. She even started imagining what it would be like if they got married, which was pretty funny. But then Liz reminded her that this wasn't actually their child. After that, Liz took the child for herself and was also called mom, which made the princess very happy. Sena was called big sister and everyone in the house liked this little girl. Kansas stepped in to reassure Ulysses, saying that they would also take responsibility for taking care of the girl. With their guidance, Sena thought there was no need to worry, the little girl wouldn't turn out bad. The main character was happy to have everyone's support. Suddenly, Ulysses became the villain in the house for wanting to get rid of the child. With no other choice, she had to agree. Everyone gathered around and asked to give her a name. Main character's father so based on him. They decided to name him based on his name. Liz suggested calling him Kururi, combining her name with Kurt's, but the idea was rejected. Yulisha, who is also called Mother, proposed that combining her name would be better than calling him Yukuri. The princess refused, and then everyone started arguing, which woke the baby up. The other two found her so adorable that they decided to give in a little and stop competing over naming rights. Kurt found his daughter truly strange, as she had the ability to calm people down and even bring everyone closer together. He suggested they call her Akuri. Since she was the one who connected the three of them, this name was the most fitting. Everyone agreed, which made the little girl happy to finally have a name. That night, Ulysses was responsible for taking care of the child and also sent Akuri's saliva and hair to Mimiko for testing. Even though they had accepted her, they still needed to find out why this girl was born. The next day, Main set up a special playroom just for his daughter. Although it looked like a playroom, in reality it was meant to confine Akuri. There were no windows at all and it couldn't be opened from the inside either. Ulysses felt quite guilty for asking Kurt to build this room. It might seem a bit cruel, but this was necessary until they received the test results from Mimiko. For now, Liz would have to be isolated and not allowed to meet anyone to prevent any danger. Seeing her father about to leave, Akuri also asked to go with him. He refused, patting her head and saying he would play with his daughter when he got back. He reminded her to listen to her big sister, and she agreed. On the way to the mission, Yulisia encouraged Main to finish his work quickly so he could come home and play with their child. He agreed, but then suddenly heard a baby's voice in the car. When he checked, he found that, by some miracle, the little one was already there. Akuri rushed in for a hug and was asked why she was here. The daughter smiled and said she had flown straight over. Kurt thought a gap in the room let the little one slip out. If this kept up, he worried his family would worry, so Main suggested they return. Just then, one of Mimiko's subordinates arrived, so Yulisia planned to entrust their daughter to this person to take her home. Kurt was troubled that Akuri was a monster. He had stubbornly insisted he raise her while his older sister worried about everyone else. The girl then came back and said that they weren't wrong about the little one. It's likely that Mimiko had already assessed that she was safe, so there was nothing to worry about. Just then, an old man approached, called them heroes, and told them they had to defeat the Demon King to save the world. Hearing that, the father and daughter immediately agreed, saying they would do their best. How dramatic. Yulisia, meanwhile, was completely confused and didn't understand anything. Then the daughter came out and revealed she was actually the one who hired them. The old man is just getting on in years, so he tends to ramble. The woman was also surprised the people from the workshop were such a young married couple. After hearing that, the two of them were shocked to be misunderstood like that again. The daughter was even complimented for being adorable, which made her really happy. Because Akuri kept calling them dad and mom, the woman was even more convinced that they were a couple. The swordswoman was so embarrassed that her face turned completely red and she froze on the spot. Kurt then asked about today's work and was taken to see the herd of sows. Lately, for some reason, they haven't been eating or drinking at all. After taking a look, Main thought it was probably just because the weather was too hot. The pigs would suffer from heat shock, making their bodies tired, so they needed to be given food that helps cool them down. Hearing that, the woman relied completely on him and took her father-in-law elsewhere to avoid interfering with their work. Main turned to call the woman, but saw that she was still standing there motionless, muttering about how the two of them were a newlywed couple, which made Kurt think she was really angry. After that, the young man got to work preparing food for the pigs. The things he made were truly special. Very quickly, the herd of sows dove in and started eating enthusiastically. At this point, Yulisia also regained her composure, thinking to herself that ever since Akuri appeared, she had been daydreaming all the time, or maybe she was being influenced by Liz. She reminded herself that she must protect the main character well and not let romantic feelings get in the way. But when she looked at that father and son, her chest ached uncontrollably. Suddenly, a gigantic dragon appeared in the sky. It landed right where Kurt was, making Yulisia anxious. She was about to rush in and fight the dragon, but Main stopped her, explaining that the creature wasn't hostile and had only come here to ask for some food that he had made. He casually explained that since she was from the city she probably wouldn't know, but in his village, dragons often came by to ask for some food. Yulisia, on the other hand, thought this whole thing was anything but normal, and to make it even funnier, his daughter called the dragon a big dog. The main character had to clarify, saying this was a dragon soaring through the wind, not a dog barking woof woof. Meanwhile, the female swordsman caught a strange scent of blood from the garden, so she went to check it out. To her surprise, one of Mimiko's people had been taken down by someone and was lying there. Right after, the attacker appeared and launched an assault. Hearing the fighting, the father and son ran over to see what was happening. They were warned to leave immediately because the opponent was extremely strong. She seemed to be targeting them, demanding that they hand over the child. Main called this person a dragon hunter, but what Yulisia sensed from her was far more terrifying. The baby dragon from earlier, who had asked for food, saw that Main might be in danger and took the father and daughter to another place. The woman was also relieved, surprised that the main character could tame a dragon so quickly. They are creatures that are never friendly toward humans, truly worthy of being rated SSS level. The battle continued, but Yulisia was completely overwhelmed. The demon woman kept advancing and slashing, but fortunately, she was still able to counterattack in time. The swordswoman asked whether her real target was the dragon or Akuri. The opponent replied that knowing wouldn't help anyway since you're about to die. Yulisia tried to stall for more time, but it didn't work. As a result, she was slashed and ended up on the ground, clutching her stomach. As the opponent approached, she used the magic crystal Kurt had made to counterattack. When it was struck, a huge explosion occurred. She was completely unharmed. At this point, the demon woman revealed her true form, growing horns. Yulisia was worried because she was completely overpowered in both magical strength and physical ability. For years, no demon had dared to appear before humans like this. The demon woman, who was also seriously injured, praised Yulisia for having once defeated even a high-ranking demon. Hearing this, the swordswoman was surprised that this demon knew about what happened that day. That also meant she had been watching them since before the city was attacked by monsters. If that's the case, there's only one possibility. The child the female demon wants to capture isn't Akuri or the dragon, but Kurt. Since she no longer had any weapons left at this moment, Yulisha could only hope that Main would return to the city to report the news. But no, he had ridden the dragon back to save them. She was shocked again, wondering why he would come back instead of running away. As known, he's not good at fighting, so even with the dragon's help, it was pointless. As soon as he landed, he tumbled into a tree and ended up with his head stuck in the ground, leaving everyone speechless. Before anyone could say anything, a wave of enraged boars came charging in. After eating food made by the main character, these boars had their physical abilities enhanced, so now they could run as fast as horses. Thanks to that, the couple was taken to another place. Yulisha asked about her daughter and learned that she was in a safe place. Curious, the older sister wondered if people in the main character's village often rode dragons or pigs to pick fights with strong opponents. He replied that of course not, this was actually the first time. Even so, as a man, he wanted to protect the woman who was important to him. Hearing this, Yulisha was delighted. However, she also knew that the important person he mentioned referred to a friend, not a romantic interest. Thinking about the affectionate gestures Liz showed toward Kurt, she felt a pang in her heart and had to admit to herself that she had fallen for him. At that moment, a fire spell was cast, burning the entire herd of boars to ashes. The opponent kept attacking, so Yulisha borrowed the main character's knife to fight, telling him not to worry, that she couldn't die, so he should get out of there. A fireball shot toward them, and just at that moment Akuri teleported back. Yulisha tried to slash the fire in half but failed. Seeing this, the demon woman suddenly turned pale and stopped her attack for some reason. She seemed to be affected by Akuri, so she left immediately, and the thief also gave the older sister a recovery potion to drink, which made her injuries no longer serious. After coming to her senses, she asked why her daughter suddenly appeared right above her. The main character didn't know either, saying the girl just suddenly appeared, as if she had used a teleportation stone. Yulisha wanted to learn more and asked her little daughter to do it again, but this time, Akuri couldn't use her ability, while the main character was still preoccupied with the person from earlier. Besides that, the poor pigs that got hit by the fireball were lying scattered all over the place. If the owner came home and saw this, they'd probably be shocked to death, so they had to heal the pigs. A while later, when the older sister came back and saw the sows eating heartily again, she felt relieved. When asked where Yulisha's husband was, the girl said he had gone somewhere. Kurt asked the little dragon to take him to find the demoness, while the mother and child had to return to the city first. When he asked Akiri if she could cast a fireball, it was clear she couldn't, so it was certain that the other side had stopped and didn't kill them. There are still many mysteries surrounding Akiri that need to be clarified, but fortunately, everyone is still alive and able to return. At that moment, the main character also returned with the demoness, who was injured. Yulisha was completely stunned by this scene. It turned out that after finding her nearly dead earlier, he had stayed behind to prepare medicine. The owl thought the main character was truly foolish for showing pity to an enemy. It believed that if she hadn't stopped in time earlier, both Yulisha and Akiri would have been done for, so this was considered a way to repay her. Since she didn't want to die yet, she obediently drank the medicine he made. Her wounds were healed, but she fell into a coma. Kurt added more medicine to make her sleep for 3 days. He still thought this woman was a dragon hunter, saying she had no right to attack a dragon that had bonded with a human like him. He had no idea whether she understood or not, since not everyone was like his childhood friend after all. After hearing the name Hildegard, the demon woman panicked before losing consciousness. Once they returned home, everyone felt relieved and the enemy would be taken elsewhere for investigation. Akiri was told to apologize, and everyone rushed over to give hugs. Sina and Liz were extremely worried, and at the same time, they introduced their new master craftsman. After seeing this young man, Yulisha was so shocked because she had no idea where he came from, yet he looked just like Kurt. He then introduced himself as Rikuto, hoping that everyone would support him in the days to come. The main character was very happy and immediately tried to make friends, completely unaware that he was being tricked. Yulisha then asked him to go make dinner. Just after assigning tasks to everyone, Rikuto approached. Without saying a word, the swordswoman kicked him straight on, and just as expected, it turned out this was only a shadow created by Liz using her weapon's ability. She had used Kurt as the model to create Rikuto, which is why they looked so alike. The princess even boasted this was what the main character would look like 20 years from now, leaving her older sister speechless. Then both received a message from Mimiko saying she would come to discuss Akiri in 3 days. Switching to that day, everyone gathered together to listen to her explanation. Their conclusion about the girl was nothing at all. After testing the hair and saliva samples sent by Ulysses, they found nothing different from a normal human. However, they did find a very small amount of something like magic crystals in the girl's fingernails. What was special was that this was spatial magic, completely unusual for ordinary people. Teleportation magic without the use of any supporting tools has been lost for thousands of years, yet Akiri is still able to do it. It's truly unbelievable. When Kurt asked again whether their daughter was a monster, Mimiko also didn't know. Her appearance and everything else are just like a human's. The royal mage was frightened by the existence of such a being in this workshop. She suggested using a seal to prevent the girl from using teleportation anymore and at the same time taking her to her own observation room, but the protagonist objected. Wanting to know the reason, he asked the girl if she was afraid of him. Of course, the answer was no, because in her mind, she always believed that Kurt would never hurt anyone. This was also his reason. He trusted Akiri because she harbored no ill intentions. So, whether the girl was human or not didn't matter. She was so innocent that she teleported herself just to meet the dragon hunter out of concern for him. This proves that my daughter is very kind-hearted. When they're together, they've never felt fear or anxiety, so I won't let anyone take her away. Ulysses also spoke up in support of the main character, placing her trust in the girl, and also because she herself had been saved by her. Liz felt the same way, considering Akiri her precious daughter. Hearing that, Mimiko no longer insisted and allowed her to continue living here. Next, they would talk to the dragon hunter to find out the reason for the attack. Kurt hoped that Mimiko wouldn't throw them in jail. But that's a bit difficult because demons are the enemies of humanity. There isn't any prison that can hold that kind of being. After being injected with the medicine, she regained consciousness. After a brief exchange, the female demon tried to use magic, but it failed. This room is sealed with a spell-blocking magic. When asked about accomplices outside, she didn't answer. She said the loser must serve the winner. But Mimiko wasn't the one who beat her. It was Kurt. If it were him, she would answer all the questions. A moment later, the young man was called in. Asked about his condition, he said he was fine, except for being tied up, which he disliked. The female demon quickly brought up the name Hildegard, mentioned earlier by the main character. The main character was very curious about her friend. He said she had visited his village often and had horns, so he thought the lady would know her. She continued by asking the main character whether his childhood friend wore a winged lion emblem or not. When the main character confirmed that she did, he was told about the desire to save Lady Hildegard. She is being held captive beneath Marquis Ticom's castle. Hearing this, Main wanted to rescue his friend. Ulysses wasn't rushed. Why should we trust the words of a demon so easily? When asked why she was targeting their group, it was revealed that she was investigating the Marquis and he was also secretly investigating them. While moving around, they accidentally witnessed Akuri appearing out of nowhere. With that kind of power, maybe she could help rescue Lady Hildegard. That's why she targeted that girl, to prove that what she said was true. The demoness then showed them the pendant she had received from Lady Hildegard. This symbol is also the reason why she stopped earlier and didn't kill Ulysses. It turns out that Main's knife is engraved with the same symbol because it was a gift from that girl to Main. He completely trusts what his older sister says. Mimiko agreed to go rescue her but insisted that the demoness stay here. If she runs away or dies halfway, then the chance to save the young lady is as good as gone, right? Kurt also advised his sister to listen, and only then did she agree. She introduced herself as Chantil. At that moment, Main's daughter teleported in and scolded the girl, saying everyone was discussing something important. What was she doing? The girl apologized, saying she missed her dad. For the mission to rescue his childhood friend, he had to entrust it to Mimiko. He himself couldn't fight and had no other way. Of course, the royal mage agreed to help, since this was no longer just his personal matter. Information about Marquis Ticol was also revealed by this friend. He lost his wife when she gave birth to their first daughter, but that girl also passed away last year due to illness. In his mansion, there is a special room that only he can enter. Mimiko's people once saw him bringing food to that room. Chantil also once broke in, but couldn't open the door inside that room. Liz suggested that if they couldn't open it, they should make the other side open it themselves. The idea is to create a fake thief and send him into that room while acting as if the thief used magic to pass through the wall. That way the Marquis would have to unlock it himself to check. Liz wants Rikuto to take on this role because he is a shadow she created herself. Coincidentally, there will be a 3-day festival next week, so they'll use the excuse of going sightseeing to carry out the plan. As for the male protagonist, they'll probably bring him along too, since leaving him here with the demon girl would be a bit dangerous. They'll trick him about the investigation, so it should all work out fine. Hearing that, Yulesia realized Liz wanted to take Main on a date, which pleased her. For the first 2 days of the festival, they won't act, letting the soldiers tire out. Afterward, the princess beat her older sister, so she'll go on the date the first day. After hearing that, Mimiko was speechless, because while they were supposed to rescue someone, these two just wanted to date Main. By afternoon, they had already set off, and since Akuri was also in the car, Kurt felt a bit awkward. The master craftsman created by Liz spoke like a real person, and even claimed royal blood, which completely startled the original. Fortunately, Main is quite naive, so she didn't ask further questions. By evening, they had rented a large inn to rest. Yulesia also asked the main character to stay here tomorrow and look after Liz and Akuri for her. As for herself, she needed to go investigate that Maki first. He was planning to help too, but the princess stopped him, insisting on going to the festival. Besides, she needed to take her daughter out to have fun. Seeing her face like that, it would be too cruel not to let her go. Hearing that, the young man agreed as well, wanting the little girl to fully enjoy the festival. And so, the next day, the three of them went out and had fun everywhere. It really was a festival. There were all sorts of things for sale. Liz then introduced a special type of cactus without thorns, which contains a delicious drink inside. So Kurt bought 2 servings. Akuri happily enjoyed it, while Main only dared to drink the leftovers. Seeing this, his daughter handed him her own portion so her father could have a taste. He didn't dare drink much, afraid that if it ran out, Akuri would be upset. Liz then also shared a bit with him. The princess was delighted since this was basically like an indirect kiss. She immediately hurried to drink from the spot Main had touched, leaving him puzzled, and to top it off, the princess even took it home as a keepsake. Previously, Main had seen many festivals but never dared to join in the fun. In his heart, he always wished he could enjoy a festival like this at least once. Hearing that, Liz held his hand and took the father and son out to have fun. She wanted to make up for the times Kurt couldn't go out like others. The 3 of them together kept getting mistaken for a married couple, which made Liz happy. Main participated in the bean balancing game and succeeded with ease, leaving the shop owner utterly shocked. The prize he received was quite substantial. With their skills, they swept through the entire shop, filling it with joy and laughter. Because she wanted to confess her feelings to Main, Liz chose a quiet place at the end of the day. Today, Kurt had a great time, so the chances of a successful confession should be over 50%. As she slowly approached, she noticed Main looking downcast. It turned out that right in front of them was the castle of Marquis Taikol. No wonder he was sad. Just thinking about his friend being imprisoned there was unbearable for him. Feeling guilty, Liz tried to comfort him. He also believed that everyone would be able to rescue Hildegard. It was just that he felt a bit heartbroken because he couldn't do anything to help. Liz listed all the wonderful things he had done for her. But he modestly thought that anyone could have done those things. The princess really wanted to tell him the whole truth but realized it wouldn't be right, so she held back. The only thing she could express at that moment was how much she cherished him. Not just her, but everyone in the family felt the same way. Everything would work out in the end, so Kurt didn't need to worry. Hearing that he was loved by so many people, the young man was moved to tears. No one has ever said something like this to me before. He said that he also cherished everyone, so he would do his best to become someone useful. Liz had planned to confess her feelings, but things turned out like this instead. Well, she'll just have to save it for another time.